Welcome to the Europe Conversation. My guest today is Luís Albuquerque. She is Commissioner for Financial Services and the Savings and Investments Union. Commissioner, thank you very much for joining us on Euronews. It's quite a portfolio that you have. But before we get into the details, I do have to ask you about the U.S. administration and President Trump. Some very heavy remarks. They argue the European Union at this point is weak. The economy is not doing well. You're regulating too much. And that could lead to civilizational erasure in Europe. How do you respond?
Well, you probably know that we have made competitiveness the core of our mandate. This is the main focus, competitiveness of Europe since we began, so already over a year ago. We are aware of the competitiveness challenges that Europe faces, but we are also very much aware of the potential that Europe has. The single market is probably the most revolutionary thing created in Europe, but it still needs to be completed. And we are working very hard on that to actually allow for the full potential of Europe to bring us to the competitiveness level that we need. And that's on us. It depends only on us.
And you talk about the single market, and we will get there in a moment. But I do want to, again, just focus on the idea of a United States that looks at Europe as a continent that is in decline. Is this continent in decline? Has regulation killed the European economy?
Again, we have a lot of potential. And, of course, the international landscape is changing. And that led us to look at ourselves probably in a bit of a different light. And we have this need to find our own open strategic autonomy. We continue to be an open economy. We continue to be open to the world. But we need to do a lot for ourselves because it is true we have lagged somewhat on competitiveness, and we also have understood the need for simplification. We have lots of rules on many different areas, and given the way that we have built them, and especially given the fragmented way we have implemented them, it became possibly a little too complicated, but we are addressing that.
So you do say it got too complicated. The focus now is to undo that.
I wouldn't call it undo. I would say go through the acquis and understand how can you preserve the purpose without undue complication. But that is not just about what we do at the Commission level. It is also how these rules are then debated with the co-legislators during the negotiation and how they are implemented in the member states. A significant part of the complexity emerges from that, from the fragmented landscape of how we implement or even just interpret the same rule across the 27 member states.
So I think I hear what you're saying, and it's not just down to the Commission. There is also an issue, perhaps, with member states and the way that they apply things. And before we move on, that's becoming a problem, you'd say.
No, it's not becoming a problem.
It is a problem.
Part of the problem we have identified. We keep hearing about gold plating. That's it. Gold plating is putting another layer over common rules, and that makes it more complicated, especially to navigate cross-border.
And for our viewers, of course, and Euronews, gold plating, of course, is a rather technical term, but what it means is you have the European legislation and then you'd have the national legislation.
You have additional rules that are applied in the national context. So something comes agreed at the European level and you make it more burdensome and complicated at national level. Yes, a part of the problem also lies there. So this has to be a joint effort. We all have to have the same objective and work at the European and national level to eliminate unnecessary burdens.
For an investor, for capital that wants to move into Europe and put money to work, when they hear this, they go, wow, this is crazy. I don't even know where to start. What's the pitch that you make?
We are addressing that. I have only last week the Commission has adopted the Market Integration and Supervision Package, which is part of our strategy for the Savings and Investments Union. And we are exactly addressing the problems we have identified on the fragmentation in our capital markets to make sure that we address the problems, we find the right solutions, and we make going cross-border in our capital markets seamless. So you can go anywhere following the same rules. That is the purpose of the package we have adopted last week.
And you mentioned doing business cross-border, and that is something that we see businesses say we want and we need. Yet, when you look at the landscape and at times political decisions, there is a very strong national instinct that kicks. I'm thinking of banks, cross-merger operations, potential acquisitions that have been blocked. Is this a single market that is simply not working?
This part of the single market that is not working. So we are talking about allowing our businesses to have a true European scale. Because if you look at Europe, Europe is big, it's powerful, and it's rich.
So how come money is going away from Europe?
Because we are keeping this money in 27 different pockets, and that's what's not working. So we really need to work and address these barriers that keep us fragmented. Because if we pool our resources together, like we have 450 million citizens, we have the highest level of income per capita as a region in the world. We have an educated population. If we bring all these resources together and we really deliver the single market, we are a global powerhouse, indeed.
And you point to, of course, the numbers and the figures going for the European Union, but in reality, Europe has become an anomaly in a way. It's a continent that is big, wealthy, rich by all international standards, highly educated, with a market, as you say, that has issues but is deeply integrated compared to other areas. And yet we see that we cannot compete on capital markets of companies going public, listing in the stock exchange compared to the United States. There are some who say this is impossible. You will never be able to overtake the U.S., but the focus should be on at least stopping these outflows into or outside of the European Union. How do you plan to do this?
I'm being way more ambitious than stopping the outflows. I really think that we have the resources and the ability in Europe. That's exactly the focus of the package we have presented last week on market integration, but that is part of a strategy which we brought on the Savings and Investments Union. But what the Savings and Investments Union tries to deliver is exactly this, is looking at what we have in Europe, what is currently preventing us from benefiting of the full scale of the resources we have, and address those barriers and work to eliminate them. And we need to act as Europeans, because there is this perception that we have small member states and big member states. We're all small. For the level of competition, for the kind of positioning we should want to have, and I believe that we Europeans really want to have, individually we're all small, but together we are actually quite big.
You said you want to be more optimistic. Do you really realistically think it gets to a point where the European capital markets can compete with the U.S. because the numbers are not pointing in that direction? And some would argue Wall Street, you look at the biggest bank, it outdoes all of the banks in Europe. It's impossible to do. Do you really think it gets to a point where the European Union can be as equally competitive?
Oh, absolutely. I think that if we do the right thing...
Can beat Wall Street?
Can be... Not Wall Street. I don't like to put things as we want to be like the U.S. No. We want to be equally competitive, following our own model. We are different, and that's a good thing. But we can be equally efficient. Why is it a good thing? Because we have different standards, different patterns. We are different as a population. There is room for diversity, but that should not prevent us from getting to our common objectives. So when we look at our European markets, we have room for local dynamic markets, but with interoperability, we can actually have our resources connected. So you can find the sweet spot in Europe. Either you want to be local, more regional, or fully pan-European. If we implement this package that we have adopted, we can get to that kind of setting that is equally supportive for the different business models you want to have. But yes, we are also looking forward to have some significantly big players, pan-European players that can compete at the global scale.
And, of course, the key, however, are the co-legislators, as you mentioned. So that means the European Parliament has to be involved, but also the different capitals. Then you need to reach out to investors. And then, of course, you need to reach out to the consumers and the savers. So I want to ask you first specifically, when you've done this European tour of countries, what feedback do you get, not just from capitals and the politicians, but really those with skin in the game and money to deploy? Has anything changed in the past year? Mario Draghi talked about radical change or decline. What's changed?
What has changed, I think it was the awareness. and the realization that we really have to work together to deliver meaningful results. In terms of outcomes, we have put forward lots of proposals, but proposals by the Commission and in themselves deliver nothing. We need the co-legislators, the European Parliament and the different governments to also share our sense of urgency, agree on what we propose and implement on the ground.
And when
we are working on that. We have already managed to agree on some relevant decisions, but we still have a lot of work ahead of us. But we do need to keep that sense of urgency and move fast. I keep asking that from the co-legislators. And yes, there is a lot happening. There is a lot that needs to be done. But truly, we have this sense of urgency. When I go to the different member states, I talk to a wide range of stakeholders, from innovators to social partners to financial sector participants, industry representatives. And I do find a lot of support. So there is a significant understanding that we need to really benefit from the scale that Europe together can bring us.
And beyond the understanding, there needs to be a horizon, there needs to be dates. I've spoken to many market players who say the idea of the banking union complete and the capital markets union, we've heard this repeatedly for years and years, and it has not been able to deliver. This year, some would argue, was not even as fast as they were expecting. And this was a lot of momentum and a lot of concerns too about the European economy specifically. What can you deliver going into 2026?
In terms of our responsibility as the Commission, we are delivering very, very fast.
Capital Markets Union, you see a completion by the end of next year?
I think that the package we have submitted, I think it's possible to have a discussion and agreement within 1 year. We just need for our co-legislators to share the same sense of urgency and level of ambition that we have. I think it is possible. It is a big package, but the challenge is to not lie on the number of legislative pieces. It's about the political willingness we have to put to it. And that is not a question of time. It's a question of willingness. So I think it is possible to have it, and then we have to deploy it. I find it a bit difficult to say delivering the Capital Markets Union, delivering the measures that complete the single market. And yes, that would lead us to the Capital Markets Union. But as long as we anchor the expectations, as we start delivering, we can start seeing results right away, because markets do work on expectations. They will want to position themselves for what they see coming.
How much do you think this can turn? How much actual figures, funding can this deploy overall? When you say, if I look at the state of Europe, this is the money on the sidelines, and this is the money that we can activate beyond the abstract if all of these manifests.
Well, we have this identified number. It started with the Draghi report talking about 800 billion investment per year. Then those estimates were updated to 1.2 trillion. We know that we have, just from the retail side, we have about 11 trillion euros in bank deposits. I'm not saying that it should all come out, but a part of that could be mobilized. We also see that there are 300 billion leaving for the US every year. A part of that, if there were good investment opportunities, would stay here. And beyond that, there is actually a lot of money out there in the world looking for a home. If we anchor the expectations, if we start delivering on this ambitious project, a lot of that money will definitely consider coming to Europe. We need to have the dynamism that the market is still a bit expecting to see.
The United States talks in terms of trillions. Is that a figure that you say it's also feasible for us?
Of course we have. I mean, if we have 1.2 trillion investment needs per year, that is the kind of size we should be talking about.
So you also want to talk in trillions?
Yes, I want to talk about achievements, and I want to talk about, and it's not just about the investment in the capital markets and the banks. It's about our citizens. It is about giving them opportunities to put their money to work and have higher returns. It's about building pension funds that guarantee adequacy of pensions for the next generations. It is about building an integrated ecosystem where every citizen in Europe and every company in Europe has the same opportunities no matter where you are located.
And Commissioner, I'm happy you mentioned the real aspect of a lot of this, which has to do with the people, citizens. They have to be active players. Otherwise, you're building a capital markets union for in silos.
Everything we do is for the people, even if we don't say it every time. This is for the European citizens. Every single decision is about improving the lives of the Europeans. Otherwise, it would be pointless.
And still, some would say that doesn't really translate, and financial literacy in Europe compared to other jurisdictions is just very low. A 25-year-old, again, I don't want to go back to the United States, but a 25-year-old knows how to invest, has a conception of money, is interested in making more money. That is something that simply doesn't seem to resonate as much in Europe. How can you change that? And do you think there is a problem with the European culture that simply doesn't like taking risks?
First, I would argue that there are parts of Europe where you find exactly that same spirit. So this is not the same picture you find everywhere. I don't think it's so much about culture. It's about incentives and opportunities. People are very much the same wherever you go in the world. You give them the right incentives and the right opportunities, and they will react accordingly. What we are trying to do, namely with the savings and the account and investment account blueprint we have presented in late September, with the financial literacy strategy, the first EU financial literacy strategy, is trying to facilitate that people are better informed, that they have more knowledge, but then they also have the opportunities to put their money to work. We have suggested and recommended that member states follow the design of this savings and investments account with some tax incentives, because, again, you give people the right opportunities, the right incentives, the right knowledge, and we will find out, I'm pretty sure, that people are the same wherever you go.
And when it comes to risk, however, we recently interviewed the Nobel Prize winner, Philippe Agon, who said, yes, but there remains this idea of risk and failure, and that is a sort of shame in Europe, in the United States, and other places in the world. It is just part of the process. Is there a bigger conversation to be had in which Europeans have to become more comfortable with the idea of risk, become less risk averse?
That comes with knowledge as well. So I think we all know intuitively, or just this common sense knowledge, that if you want reward, you have to take some risks. That is basic knowledge that everyone understands. What we need to make sure is that people also have enough understanding so that they can find the level of risk they feel comfortable with. We are all different. So what we need to give is people opportunities to choose how they want to position themselves in this risk-reward relation. And if we give people opportunities, you see, for example, crypto growing very, very fast. It's a very risky area, and yet people are investing because they're eager to get returns. So I think there is this... I know what you're talking about, this perception about failure and this kind of social pressure. I wouldn't say it's a cliche. I think it's something that in terms of public perception we probably should work on. But again, if we give people the opportunities, the knowledge, the incentives, they will follow this because they are eager to get return. And approaching risk appropriately is what is giving them that return. And yes, we need to develop, maybe I wouldn't call it culture, I'd call it the habit, making this something that people normally do, investing. And you find this in parts of Europe. In the Nordics, for example, you find a very different setting. So Europe is not all the same. It's different. That is also part of our richness.
And lastly, you have been described as a commissioner that is very compatible with Mario Draghi. I've seen you described as the Draghiani commissioner. Is that something that you say, yes, I recognize myself in his words, or would you say, yes, I'm part of this Draghi School of Economics? How would you define it?
I would say that the first thing we have approved as a commission, so the whole commission, was the competitiveness compass, which translates the Draghi report into a set of actions. So I would argue we are all Draghians in that sense. We all understand the diagnosis made, the need to provide solutions, and we are all committed to delivering those solutions, the whole Commission.
And that's the compass?
The competitiveness compass is actually translating into action.
And
what
Draghi
were the
is
recommendations?
The compass of that compass, would you say? He's
Draghi
the voice
was the inspiration of that compass, and the fact that he was the one presenting the report was actually very, very good, because he's very recognized as someone credible, knowledgeable. So it is a very a significant help that he says it.
Well, Commissioner Albuquerque, thank you so much for joining us on the Europe Conversation on Euronews.